Yep.
Okay. Good evening, everyone. I'm using the microphone to reach those folks in the back and the crowd we have here tonight. Bill Burkhead, Superintendent. I know we have some guests on Zoom, so the phone is here to help them here as well. So proud to be here tonight, our 8th public meeting or forum on the Cushing Hatherly new building project. And each time we have these forums, we get feedback, and it's extremely helpful because we listen, we take that information, and we put it in the next presentation to make sure we address any questions or concerns. So each presentation of the 8 have evolved and addressed questions and concerns that folks have, and and that will be the same for tonight. Our next public meeting will be April 2nd at the Senior Center at 6:30. So hopefully folks can make that as well, because we'll have likely more and different information as we continue to go. So what I'd like to do tonight is give you a quick overview, and then we'll get into it. We're going to start with a video that we've put together. This is a premiere. So apologies for no popcorn, but maybe next time, host. Premiere video. It's about 8 minutes long. It's a little lengthy, so I appreciate your patience. What we'll do is we'll break this down in 2-minute segments. It covers 4 key areas of the project, the why we're doing this. Talks a little bit about when we get into redistricting, talks about the money, and then it talks about the voting process and that kind of stuff. So it's really important. It's a high level, and what we'll do following that is we'll have a slide deck, a pretty comprehensive one, that will get into the details of what the video talks about the entire project. And we'll also, one of our speakers' piece here is we'll have a section online on Mentimeter. If you don't know what that is, I guess our friend here, Jason, will share that with you. But it's an opportunity for folks to anonymously share things via their phone, if they're home, or they're here, in real time. So we'll get those questions as well. And so we'll have a good opportunity to give everyone a voice into the process. Before we start the video, though, I do want to go around and do quick introductions, because the majority of the folks here tonight are the committee and put a lot of work into this, so I want to thank them. But they're a great resource, and they come to each of these meetings so that we can have a breadth of knowledge here to answer the questions the best we can. All right, so we'll start right here.
Scott Williams, Principal of Cushing School.
Christine Sheehan, Principal of Hatherly School.
Tom Engelsberg, I'm a project manager with Dora Whittier Architects.
Hi everyone, I'm Don Walter, Principal with Dora Whittier Architects. Good evening, I'm Jason Boone, I'm an Educational Facility Planner with Dora Whittier.
John Lemieux from Vertex, the owner's project manager.
Nicole Brandolini, School Committee Chair, School Building Committee Chair.
Chris Cataldo, Director of Facilities at the Public Schools. Tom Rebb, the Director of Business and Finance with the schools.
Nancy Holt, Town Finance Director in Town County.
All right, thank you, everyone. So I'm going to turn it over to Tom to start the video. Thank you.
Situate Public Schools embarked on the MSBA process in May 2020 to evaluate the needs of the aging elementary schools in our district. After exhaustive work by our community, we proposed a new elementary school be built to consolidate Cushing and Hatherly schools and provide more capacity for pre-K. The Massachusetts School Building Authority accepted our proposal. MSBA is a state agency that accepts a limited number of applications through a highly competitive process each year to provide grants for the construction and renovation of public schools. By entering this process, Situate stands to receive up to $35.8 million in state money to help pay for the new school's construction. That money reduces the cost to Situate's taxpayers. For the past 16 months, we've updated our community on the feasibility study, preliminary design, and schematics of our plan. We're now at the project scope and budget approval phase of this project. In this video, we'll explain why our district needs to construct a new elementary school. We'll share how the proposed design of the new elementary school meets these needs. We'll lay out our plan for consolidating the 2 schools in a way that's least disruptive to our community and our students. We will provide detailed numbers on what the project will cost, what Situate's share of the expenses, how we plan to finance this expense, and the impact it will have on our tax assessments. And we will explain what a yes and no vote mean for the project, which our district will present to our town's voters for approval at a special town meeting on April 29th and on the town election ballot on May 18th. Our district leaders sought MSBA funding for a new elementary school because both Hatherly and Cushing have reached the end of their useful lives. Here's how. Hatherly, opened in 1962, was identified by the MSBA as having the greatest needs of any of the elementary schools. Cushing is just 2 years younger, opened in 1964. They both have deficient site conditions with poor pavement, vehicle circulation, and drainage, deteriorating exteriors, including poor insulation, rotting windows, and leaky roofs, decaying 20-year-old modular classrooms which were meant to be temporary solutions, and aging interiors that are not fully accessible. Both schools would require total replacement or significant upgrades to basic systems like heating, ventilation, and electrical to remain in operation. Even with upgrades and repairs, neither Cushing nor Hatherly have the capacity to deliver the type of programming that grants our children an excellent educational experience for the next 60 years. That's central to how we've designed a single new school. We started with community input, an intensive visioning process with community members, parents, students, administrators, and teachers to imagine an innovative design that includes varied and flexible learning environments and avoids the antiquated one-size-fits-all model. This will serve a multi-tiered system of supports and students with diverse and individual needs. We stayed true to our strategic plan, creating a universal design for learning in our physical space with traditional classroom spaces and flexible breakout spaces. We also designed with the entire community in mind. A fully accessible space zoned into private and public spaces, improved Flannery Field, substantial gym space, and fully accessible playground, all with easy access and ample parking. We tied the indoor and outdoor spaces together with connections into 2 courtyards that will be used for developmentally appropriate learning. And we prioritized safety and our footprint on the neighborhood with separate secure entrances for pre-K and the elementary school, private and public zones in the building, and a traffic flow that will reduce impact in the surrounding neighborhood. By constructing a single new elementary school for 460 Cushing and Hatherly students and new space for 100 pre-K students, Scituate can take 2 aging buildings offline. Our goal to consolidate and redistrict 2 schools will be to smoothly acclimate children, families, teachers, and staff to the new building with minimal disruption. Here are the guiding principles we will follow while consolidating and redistricting Scituate for a new elementary school. We commit to an inclusive process, providing an opportunity for every voice to be heard through a series of community conversations about the redistricting process. Our goal is to minimize the social and emotional impact on our children, prioritizing keeping families together at one school. Should voters approve the plan to build a new elementary school, the discussion of the redistricting process will take place as early as fall 2024 to prepare for the opening of the school in fall 2027. Here's the project scope and budget for a new elementary school under the MSBA process. The total project budget is $119.4 million. This includes careful contingency planning for rising costs, demolition of the Cushing School, and infrastructure improvements. The MSBA would contribute up to $35.8 million to this budget, leaving about $83.6 million for Scituate to finance. You'll see that this number is very close to the cost that was estimated by our design team at the preferred schematic phase of this process last October. Here's how we propose to pay for it. A 25-year bond structured in a manner to save millions of dollars of interest over the life of repayment by paying equal amounts of principal each year. Using a conservative interest rate of 4 3/4%, that amounts to $866 of additional property taxes in the first year of repayment on a $921,000 home, the average single-family assessed home in Scituate. By year 25 of repayment, that tax impact has declined to $414 of additional taxes on the same valued home. We're presenting this financing to voters as a debt exclusion, meaning the tax increase is temporary. The tax amount declines each year and expires when the bond is repaid. This project's scope and budget now requires action by voters. This will take place on 2 key dates. At a special town meeting on April 29th, the project requires a 2/3 majority of town meeting attendees to approve. The project also appears as a ballot question at the town's election on May 18th and requires a simple majority of voters to move forward. The project must achieve a positive result at both the special town meeting and the ballot in order to move forward. If voters approve the project in the town election, the MSBA project team would move forward with final design of a new elementary school, then construction, with the goal of cutting the ribbon and occupying the new school in fall of 2027. If voters do not approve the project, Situate Public Schools will need to address the repair and improvement of Cushing and Hatherly elementary schools through its regular capital improvement process. The MSBA's involvement would cease, and any future MSBA involvement on a future project would require the filing of a new statement of interest by the town. The cost of maintaining these two buildings would continue to rise and would require Situate to divert maintenance money from other buildings. Renovation of the existing buildings for mechanical systems, structural needs, and current accessibility code requirements has a number of differences from the current MSBA process. 100% of these expenses would likely have to be paid with local tax dollars, as the educational needs of the district are not being met by this method. We estimate these expenses at $62 million in 2024 dollars. But when forecast with inflation and price increases across the time period it would take to complete the renovations, we estimate the total expense to be $80.6 million. That's $3 million less than the contribution Situate would make toward a new elementary school under MSBA. Renovation would also take significantly longer, as the improvements would have to be made in phases using modular space, which would disrupt student learning. Nor would it solve any of the critical education space challenges present in both buildings or add needed pre-K capacity. The MSBA process is challenging, but we believe is the best way to achieve our mission of inspiring, supporting, and challenging all learners to reach their unique potential. Please take a moment to review more of the design plans, project renderings, and budget numbers of this project in the MSBA section of the Situate Public Schools website.
While we're transitioning to our presentation, any questions or comments? No? All right. All right, we'll start our presentation now. And as we're going on here, if we've got a small enough group, if you have a question, you can just ask it out or raise your hand, or if there's folks online. We have Brandolini watching over that. We can certainly pause and answer any questions. So I'll turn this over to Mr. Walton.
Hey, everyone.
Look.
There we go. So I'm gonna kick it off here, and you're gonna want great information already through the video. So we'll go over what we've heard already rather quickly, in an effort to get everyone out in a reasonable time. So we've done our introduction for example schedule and the process. Talk about the project needs a little bit, design sports education, budget, which of course is very important. In the next steps. But before we do that, we'll talk about Mentimeter. Let Jason jump in, talk about that.
Thanks, Tom. This is the same platform that we've used in the past. As Superintendent Burke had mentioned at the outset, the district is really interested in everyone's feedback, and so there'll be lots of different mechanisms for you to provide that feedback throughout tonight's presentation. And you access the Mentimeter platform in a couple of different ways. If you're on a laptop device, you can use the website menti.com and enter the code there to join the presentation. Or if you're got your phone or personal device on you, you can point the camera at that QR code and enter the show. When you do that, what should appear on your device is the presentation that we're giving. And you'll notice that on every slide, there'll be an opportunity to react to the content, either thumbs up, thumbs down, heart. And in fact, we're going to enable the Q&A feature in Mentimeter so that you can submit a question on a particular slide, and then we'll go over and respond to those questions at the end of tonight's show. So if you're using Mentimeter, if you're in the platform, if you could give us a thumbs up there to let us know that you've entered the platform, that'll help us understand who's participating. Okay, and with that, I'll turn it back over to Don.
Thanks, Jason. So, just to take you through the process here, introduce the team. So the team is, basically, we're working with the school department, school committee, school building committee of the town of Situate. We being Dawn Whittier, you see at the bottom, we're the designer, architects, engineers, and consultants who will be designing the building and the project. Vertex, who is the owner's project manager, they are really helping to guide us, working directly with the town and the school building committee. And off to the left is a really important participant. That's the Mass School Building Authority, MSBA. You hear that name quite a bit throughout the process. They're the funding source. They fund a percentage of the project that's going to be built. So it's really important that we work closely with them, which we've been doing. We follow their guidelines, which are very prescriptive, and we end up with the best project that's going to meet all the educational and space and facility goals for Situate as it relates to Hatherly and Cushing. So what's the project? The project is basically the Hatherly and the Cushing elementary schools. And what's really nice is it's a consolidation that MSBA has allowed from the very get-go. So 460 students, and working with the school department, the school community, in order to have the 100 pre-kindergarten students added to the building, so for a total population of 560. And you'll see all the options that we've gone through as we get further into the discussion. But after an exhaustive process, it was determined that Hatherly was the best site to build this new school. So in terms of the schedule, we started here along with Vertex in 2022. But as you can see by this timeline, this has been talked about for a lot longer than that. There was an elementary study really done back in 2017, so 5 years before we were even involved. And a lot of work was done to develop that study and a master plan. And then out of that came the, hey, we need some work done on our elementary schools here. And the districts provided statements of interest to the MSBA, basically identifying the needs of the schools. And the first time it went in was not accepted. Second time it went in, it was accepted. As you can imagine, it's quite competitive because of 351 cities and towns in Massachusetts, and a lot of people have similar needs to Situate. So once that statement of interest was accepted, town was voted into by the MSBA board into the eligibility phase, which allowed them to basically get everything lined up with the money, with the school building committee, and ultimately get to the point where they go into feasibility and hire Vertex, the OPM, and Dawn Whittier, the architect or the designer. And then with that, we've gone through most of this feasibility study stage, which we'll look at in detail in a minute. But the big picture here is that the feasibility study that we've done in schematic design, about 16 months worth of time, we're going to continue through with favorable votes on about another 15 months worth of design and bidding, which will lead us to construction late summer, early fall of 25, with occupancy of the new building by fall of 27. So from the very beginning to occupancy, you're talking about 10 years worth of time. So you can imagine all the hours put into this bid. And then the detail of this is the feasibility study and schematic design phase that we've been in. We've gone through the preliminary design program, the preferred schematic report. We've now completed the schematic design phase. That's been submitted to MSBA. They're reviewing that now. We've had minimal comments to date. As you can see also, there have been a number of public meetings along the way. On top of that, working group meetings, school building committee meetings, meetings with various the abutters and families. So it's been quite a detailed process that's led us to where we are today. And basically what we're doing is we're leading up to an MSBA board vote, which takes place on April 24th. And since we've been working so closely with them, we don't expect any surprises. We expect that they'll vote this favorably. And with that in hand, we'll go through and have the town meeting and the debt exclusion ballot votes in April. So people have asked, well, how did you get to where you are, which is a new consolidated building on the Hatherly site? Well, we went through the PDP and PSR phases that I just noted a minute ago here. But just to give you a quick overview, we looked at 23 different options. We looked at options on this site, the Cushing site. We looked at options on the Hatherly site. They ranged from just repairing the buildings to doing additions and renovations to doing all new. So we went through that process. We developed a matrix, an options matrix to determine which were the most viable options of all those. And you can see circled in red, 6 solutions rose to the top, which led us to the next phase, which is what we call the first schematic report, or PSR. The repair only, which is required that we look at that. That is basically your baseline option for what could be done in the buildings to make them work better. Systems, roofs, windows, handicap accessibility does not address any of the programmatic needs, does not address any of the space needs. That's the repair option. We looked at additional renovation options, which you can see down below on the Hatherly site. We looked at a new construction option in the upper right, and new construction option in the lower right, all on Hatherly. Cushing was deemed to be a more costly site to do work on, so we gravitated back towards Hatherly, plus the fact that Cushing is really at the end of a dead-end road. And in each case, we were looking at just K through 5 and pre-K through 5, still at this time before school committee voted to do a pre-K through 5. So the option 18, at that time about $120 million in the upper right-hand corner, is the pre-K through 5 option. That was selected, and we've gone through the schematic design phase. So that gives you a little bit of history of what we've done to date that's led us to where we are today. And with that, I'll turn it over to Tom Rapp.
Thank you very much, Don. So many people ask, how did we get to that number, 460, when we're talking K to 5? And the MSBA actually took a look at all 4 of our elementary schools, and they looked at the enrollment, they looked at enrollment projections over the next 10 years to try to determine the capacity of all of our elementary schools. And they determined that there is a little bit of room at Jenkins, there is a little bit of room at Wampatuck. And so if you were to do a little bit of math, and you say currently we have 368 students here at Cushing, 250 at Hatherly for 618, but we're only building a building for 460. And it seems a little bit confusing. Well, the MSBA understands that some students are going to have to go to Jenkins and Wampatuck, and we'll be able to house 460 here. But the other thing to understand is we have a commitment to low class size, and there are 24 classrooms, K to 5, in the new building, 4 for each grade level. It's 480 students at 20 per class. So if we went to 21 per class, we'd be over 500. So I think there's plenty of capacity in the school that we're designing, the consolidated school. The MSBA calls the 460 a design enrollment, but the capacity, the design capacity is higher than that. And so I think you saw in the video, we're committed to an inclusive process for that redistricting. We're committed to making sure we listen to everybody. We heard the situation back in Jenkins 20 years ago. People are still discussing that with us, letting us know what happened. We're learning from those lessons, and we'll apply those over the next couple of years. We've also had some discussion about pre-K, and you heard earlier we added 100 spaces for pre-K in the new building. Right now, the pre-K is at Wampatuck, and there are 3 classrooms of pre-K, and there's no more room for expansion. And every year, we've had a waiting list for our pre-K, and we know that there are only going to be more and more students. Earlier on in the project, some of the local vendors, people who are providing pre-K services in town, came to us concerned. Are we going to supplant their work? Are we going to be able to, are we going to put them out of business, to be honest. And it became clear that we're not intending to do that at all. We have 100 seats here. There are well over 200 pre-K students in the district, and that's 3 and 4-year-olds, so there's probably even more than that, 300 or 400. So we're not putting local pre-K vendors out of business. We need to expand our own capacity. Right now we have 3 classrooms. We're really expanding it by 1, and it will give us more opportunity to work with our pre-K students. And it's a great opportunity with a new building and the flexibility in that new building. I don't know what was the next slide, forgive me.
All right, so we're now going to start talking a little bit about the existing conditions at the 2 schools, at Hatherly and Cushing. And I'm just going to give a brief introduction here. As we've heard, as we saw a little bit in the video, and a little bit going forward here, the spaces in the buildings, what we have are spaces that are missing or undersized in the buildings. There are inappropriate spaces and adjacencies, like, for example, the library next door, and spaces like that where you've got classrooms or educational stuff happening right next to other classrooms. So there's an issue there in terms of disruption. These buildings have no meeting spaces. It's very hard to find, for adults to find meeting space to talk to other adults, to talk to parents, to talk to children. That's a real issue. The modular classrooms that we talked about in the video, they're going on 24 years old. They're still in use. They're really falling apart. But the real issue here, aside from the facilities themselves, are the services. The mechanical, electrical, and plumbing systems in these buildings are really on their last legs. Scott was telling me last week we had a plumbing overflow in here, and we've had some other issues lately in this building. So there's a lot that needs to be fixed in these buildings. As Don said before, Hatherly was determined to have the greatest need of the 2 schools, but since they're twin schools, a lot of the issues are very similar between the 2. So Scott's going to talk about some of these issues.
Thank you, Tom. So my name is Scott Williams, and I'm the principal of the magnificent Cushing School. My mission and goal tonight is to present to you some of our physical challenges that we are currently experiencing for our impacting our students in our learning environment, some of the limitations and challenges we are confronted with on a daily basis. So on the left, you will see a photo. This is clearly some pooling. We have some clogged drainage challenges here. Not only is this impactful for play space, children having recess, it also impacts our local crosswalks, sidewalks, concrete. I believe this is the entrance to Hatherly School. So as you can see, there's some cracking, there's some damage, and obviously this impacts accessibility for any of our handicapped students or staff members that need access. So not only is pooling a problem environmentally, but it impacts our children as well. This next slide on the left, you will see some evidence of cracking, peeling. These are not highly insulated thermal windows. I believe they're single pane, which obviously presents a challenge with heating and conservation of costs for heating our buildings. Not only is it aesthetically not pleasing, but not efficient. And then on the right, you'll see this is a flat roof. Obviously, there's pooling here on this roof, and obviously no pitch, which can accommodate water runoff. This is a rubber membrane roof, so it not only does it prevent, it causes leakage in our classrooms, which impacts instruction and time of learning, but it does not mitigate any sound. So when you are sitting in a room, it is actually environmentally disturbing to our children. This next slide shows an example of, so this is clearly one of our, the integrity of the brick here is due to moisture, damage, and algae. Again, pooling and water runoff, which is impacting our drainage, impacting our HVAC. There's clearly some evidence of rust there. And then this here is one of our I believe these are 24-year-old. They're modular, temporary, and this has clearly become part of the building. There's vinyl damage, there's growth of moisture and algae. And on another slide, it shows very clearly, which is concerning handicap access, because there really is no accommodation for our children in the event of an evacuation for safety. So that is something that is concerning as well. This slide, on the left, you'll see this is the Cushing lift, where we actually have a student now at Cushing who is requiring access to the upper elementary wing. In order to have an equitable educational experience, our children have to have access to art, music, and gym on the upper wing. This presents challenges in many ways. It breaks down frequently. It's really not pleasant to have that there. And it does create an element of embarrassment for the child, because that is the only way that they can have a motorized lift. It has broken down in my short tenure here, and the parts to replace this are quite expensive. It's problematic to order them. It does add up. And then on the right is an example of a typical bathroom here. Again, handicap accessibility. We have some limitations with the sink, with accessing the toiletries, so challenging environment. The slide on the left depicts a kindergarten classroom. Here we have there's some damage here. Again, handicap access, the children cannot, there's no under opening where you can fully access the water or any instructional materials that are provisioned for student use. We've got some damage with the cabinetry, the hinges are breaking, so it's not an optimal learning setting. And then this, I believe, is the Hatherly stage, which is troubling to us, concerning, because there is no ramp for equitable access for our children. Our PTOs do so much work for our children to promote enrichment programs and theatrical performances. It's a disparate practice, because we don't have any accessibility for those children that would want to participate. And earlier we mentioned our boilers and our heating systems. These are very antiquated heating systems. I believe they are original to the 1962-64 buildings. We have leakage, damage. Again, the parts are very difficult to replace. They're hard to order. On the right, you'll see our fuses and our electrical components. It's very difficult and challenging to order these parts in a timely fashion. They do break down. We have had very recent experience with this at Cushing. So I can only say emphatically that they are beyond their use and their shelf life. The picture on the left depicts, again, roof leaking damage, which is not ideal for our learning environments for our children. And on the right, this picture is, we have so few electrical outlets. When this was designed in the early 60s, we did not have the instructional technologies and the devices that we have today. So this is not only an aesthetically not pleasing situation, but it's probably not safe, because we're overloading our circuits. I believe this is the Hatherly art room on the left, and we applaud this teacher who has made the best use of a very small room to make this an experience for our children. In an art room, it's very lively. There's projects, there's painting, there's sculpture. It's very kinesthetic, hands-on learning with projects and groups. There's really no storage. There's no adequate storage in this learning space for our children. And this on the right is a Hatherly mechanical room. When these buildings were constructed in the 60s, there was no design for our children who need occupational therapy, physical therapy. This was built out of need for our students, and as you can see, it's less than ideal. Children need to develop their gross motor skills, their fine motor skills. This is a mechanical room, which generates a lot of noise. So those children have sensitive needs. This is less than optimal for them. And here is our very own Cushing library, right over here. So I've said earlier in prior presentations, the heart and the soul of every elementary school is the library. That's where our children develop their love of reading and writing and exploring books and love of that. And there's no natural light here. There's very heavy traffic, and there are classrooms right off of this space. So it's noisy. and it's really not the best environment for quiet learning for our children to experience the joy of reading and developing the long-term love of reading. It's the foundation of their skill building here at our schools at the elementary level. And on the right, we don't have real great space for small groups, and so we had to put up some cubicles and make the best of it, but again, noisy, high traffic area. We have our wind blocks where students receive interventions in mathematics and literacy, and it does not create a great learning environment for that small group instruction. Thank you. Mr. Burton.
Thank you. I want to follow up, because it's been mentioned a couple times. We had the backup in the cafeteria septic, right? And, we had a real issue. We were up till almost, midnight getting things cleaned up and moved into so the kids could eat. We had to move all the tables and chairs into the gym. We had to communicate with parents. It was a real touch and go situation. People were concerned. So I wanted to share the practical implications of some of these things that people say, okay, they just happened. They impact kids, they impact learning, they impact families. We almost had to cancel school. And that would have been a shame, because now you're making it up at the end of the year, and it's a real problem. And then the following week, part of the boiler, broke. That was what Scott referenced there. And if that was in January, we would have missed multiple days of school to fix that. We intermittently had heat, and the weather's been relatively mild, so there was one day where the kids had to put their jackets on, but they toughed it out. And that had to be replaced. So was inconvenient, obviously, for teachers and learning. It was a little cold in here. Again, if that was in the winter months when it was really cold, we were going to shut down.
So it took 4 days to get parts for those.
4 days to get parts, because it's so old, and it's going to cost us about $25 grand. So again, good money after bad. So I just wanted to, kind of make a connection of what impacts the actual classroom and learning in the classrooms when these older buildings start to break down. What I share up here is just the great work our community has supported through capital projects. We mentioned that earlier in the video, where it talked about that if this doesn't go through, that we'd have to divert our capital money to these two buildings, obviously, and it would take away from some of the other work here. I also wanted to share this slide because I think it's important to show the community that we've been responsible stewards of their money. That we don't want to come back in 3 to 5 years and say we need another new elementary, another new school. Right? So what we're doing is proactively on these other older buildings, like the high school, like Wampatuck, even Jenkins is getting older now. We're sinking good money in there to take care of big ticket items, to address that. So we won't be in a situation where we're in with these buildings right now. So I won't go through all of them. They're on our website. I also want to point out some, again, why I love Situate, what attracted me to come here was the community supporting schools. The Jenkins playground, within a year, an old, diminishing playground was replaced with a brand new, vibrant playground through the contribution of the PTO and the collaboration with the CPC. That $400,000 was funded by those two programs. So amazing. The kids absolutely love it. So there's other things up there that were also facilitated with other groups, but I just wanted to share all of that information, which is about $6.5 million, on average over $2 million a year that's going to good causes, and we'll continue to do that.
So just first discussion on cost. So as you saw in the video, there was some discussion about the repair-only option. And what was identified was that the cost to bring these buildings just up to code, again, without addressing anything educationally, was $62 million in today dollars, right? So that's if you could stop everything right now today, move everybody out, that's what the cost would be. The video talks about an $80 million option. Well, how did you get to 80 million? The reality is if you took 3 years to basically run through each school, because there would be no real plan to be able to replace, to take all of the students and put them somewhere. It would have to be a phased approach. And you need the building to operate, still educate the kids. So you're talking about summers, you're talking about vacations, a real inefficient way to approach the process. So basically what we did is said, look, if you took about 3 years to do each school, and you would never do them both at the same time, that's where the 6 years came from. So it's, it's just simple math with inflation, that if you break up, do a third, the remaining 2/3 of one building and 3/3 of the other gets pushed, goes up by about 5% a year, you do another third the next year, and so on and so forth. So the reality is as was said in that video, a repair of these buildings would be, again, a phased process. There would be escalation for all the work that doesn't get done right away. The kids would be in more modular classrooms because that's the only real place that you could put them as a group together. And again, at the end, wouldn't meet the educational needs of the district. MSBA reimbursement would be unlikely. MSBA doesn't like us saying that they would. The reality is the MSBA wouldn't participate in the process if the repairs didn't help bring the school into compliance with your educational plan. It doesn't, so they wouldn't want to participate in that plan. And then ultimately, as was said, capital planning dollars that are going to the other schools right now would almost immediately need to be brought back in to start repairing some of the things that you just heard about earlier this evening.
So I'd like to take a few moments to share some of the educational features for our project that will help to improve the experience for students and achieve our goals from our strategic plan. So our visioning process for this project began and was established about a year ago through a series of visioning workshops and the district's strategic planning process. And right from the very beginning, we wanted to make sure that these 5 principles embodied this project. So the first one is purposeful innovation, and those are innovations that are grounded in our programs, services, and practices that are supported by research and considered to be best practices in the educational field. The Universal Design for Learning is an educational framework that is also research-based, and it recognizes that all students learn differently. This framework has helped to guide the development of a much wider variety of flexible instructional spaces. We have always wanted this building to be a part of our community. So there are several features within this project that really allow the larger community to have access to the building and its site in a safe way beyond school hours. We also feel strongly that learning can and should happen outside the confines of the traditional classroom. So there are several features that really make that connection between the indoors and the outdoors in a very intentional way. And finally, safety. Safety is always at the forefront of our minds, and we have always insisted that the features in this building make the building and the site safe and welcoming. So in short, this project has a lot of features necessary to give us an excellent educational experience for the next 60 years and beyond that. So much has been learned today about the learning process than was known when these buildings were built. Situate has a commitment to the Universal Design for Learning, which means that each student has a different set of needs. Having only a classroom at your disposal limits our ability to meet those needs. So that is why this project has a much wider variety of spaces in it. Educators will have access not just to their classroom, but also to small group spaces, extended learning areas, and outdoor learning opportunities. As you can see in this rendering, each classroom will have immediate access to these extended learning areas. These spaces can be used for one-to-one support, small group projects, or just increasing students' independence. Some other examples of purposeful innovation here are showing a maximization of storage. So if you've noticed, just outside that door are the student cubbies. Up above those are locked teacher storage. And what that does is it allows us to maximize the storage space within the classroom in a creative way. One of the key features to this project is the inclusion of 2 enclosed courtyards, each one tuned to the developmental needs of the students that it will serve. This shown here is the southern courtyard. That will serve our students in pre-K to grade 2. There is a playground here for pre-K, and that's really important because we want our youngest students to have a safe and secure place to play. But this courtyard is also large enough to accommodate other educational spaces. So if you notice, there are no individual grade level classrooms that are adjacent to that courtyard. If you look over there on the right, our extended learning areas are there, which will benefit from the natural light coming in and the views into the courtyard. But there are 3 classroom spaces there. Our OT-PT room is there, our music room, and our art room. Those spaces were intentionally placed there with input from district teachers so that those classes can spill out into that courtyard when appropriate. Another key feature of the design supports the concept of learning on display. We wanted to make sure that anyone who enters this building sees that learning is evident. A perfect example of that is the library that you see here. The library is prominently located at the front of the building, adjacent to the front door and near the main office, and also near that main gallery corridor that goes between PE, art, and music, so that anyone who's in that building, anyone who visits, can recognize immediately that this is a place of learning. One of the key deficiencies in our current buildings is related to our special education spaces and related service professionals. This project gives us an opportunity to provide purpose-built spaces to maximize inclusive practices, to reduce stigma, and to meet the needs of our most vulnerable students. And that's something that our current buildings really cannot do for us. In this diagram, in the pink sections in that diagram, show where the special education spaces would be located and the related service providers. And one of the amazing things about this is it leaves those children with their age level peers. That is where you're really going to find those inclusionary practices improve. This is the cafeteria. So when we talk about outdoor connections, this is what we mean. That wall of windows there allows soft northern light to come in as students are eating, but also giving them the views of that 3rd, 4th, and 5th grade courtyard. This courtyard is slightly smaller than the other, and we have plans in that courtyard to have outdoor dining, which you see there, raised garden beds for science and other outdoor learning activities. Other key elements of this site is that there will be separate age-appropriate playgrounds conveniently located close to the school for during school use, but also available to the community for after-school use. Flannery Fields will also be relocated over on the right-hand side of your screen there, and that is located far more conveniently to the gym for physical education classes, and also next to the parking so that it can be used by the community at night and on weekends. The site also features an improved traffic flow. So that large loop there in the blue shows where the car drop-off and pickup lane will be. Buses would be in the back. And so there is enough space there for approximately 70 cars to stack up, which will help alleviate the backing up of cars onto Ann Vinyl. It's also a much safer plan. Currently at Hatherly today, students need to cross the bus lane to get to and from the drop-off lane. Over on the left-hand side, we have the dedicated pre-K parking, and this is so that our youngest students, the families can pull in there, help them get out of the car, walk them to school if necessary.
Yeah, sure, yeah. I can't get it. Hold on. Yeah. We're not gonna do it. We can't get out of it at all. Woo! It wouldn't, nothing would click. Oh, no, no, you're not on Zoom yet. Oh, yeah. Yeah, I just said that. Someone shared, someone came in the waiting room and shared their screen. No, not the waiting room, from the waiting room, and then it instantly went to share screen. Take it, stop.
We'll be busy tonight, let's carry on for the people here. All right. Very good. It's safe to say we won't be posting the,
Okay, well, picking up where Christine left off, community connections are very important in the design of the school. And it really starts with the design of a secure and welcoming entrance. It really is important to have a school that is both welcoming and also very effective in terms of its security and safety. In terms of the design, we try to recognize the seaside aesthetic of Situate in the choice of some of the materials and colors that we've used in the outside of the building. And again, making that community connection, making the outdoor facilities available for the community, public access to Flannery Field, the site amenities, and the playgrounds around the school. And then on the inside, we've crafted what we call kind of a parent-family reception area in the main lobby. The diagram on the right shows the entry sequence to get in the building, which is kind of a three-step sequence to verify people's identities, understand what their business is in the school, bringing them inside and getting them badged up before we even let them into the school proper. So there really isn't a way to walk directly into the building from the outside or the inside without going through that process. And then once you're inside the building, this view on the left is what you're greeted with, which is that family reception area where parents can wait for a meeting to happen, or they can meet their students if they're leaving the building for some reason, those sorts of things, and conversations can happen there. So really nice to kind of put that public foot forward in just inside the front door. While it's really important for the school to be accessible, it's also, we've designed it to be very secure in the sense that after hours, the two wings off to the side in gray wouldn't be accessible, but the center core public facilities would be accessible to the community after hours. So this configuration that we've got going here works on many levels for security during the day as well as after school. During construction, safety on the site is going to be paramount. We have a phased site plan where the new building is going to be under construction while the existing building is still in use. So if you can imagine the new building going where the existing Flannery Field is now, that's the orange shape, that's the footprint of the building on the left there, while the school in green, the existing Hatherly school is functioning. We've taken some steps to replace some of the pieces in the site that are lost to the construction area, bringing those back on the bottom right of that diagram there. We've done a lot of thinking about how construction is going to be separated from the rest of the school site, fencing, controls on construction, access, and the other construction impacts, and really thinking hard about the site circulation plan. It's very important for a building like this to be built to last. The cost of materials are weighed against their durability. We really are trying to pick very durable materials that will last, 50+ years. At the same time, we're controlling cost by designing efficiently and with clean details that are easy to build, easy to construct, easy to fabricate. So we think about the design and the construction that way. Durability is also one of the key aspects of sustainability. A building that lasts a long time is also a very sustainable green building. In addition to that concept, we're also looking at these other concepts that are on the screen here, thinking about the site, water use, energy efficiency, the selection of the mechanical systems. Acoustics is incredibly important in schools. As I said before, that's a real issue in the existing buildings. Lighting is incredibly important. Access to natural light and daylight and views, all very important. So we're pursuing LEED certification for this project with a silver minimum. Gold is kind of our stretch goal. And then we're also able to garner an additional 4% MSBA reimbursement because of the sustainability measures of the project. So we're getting money back from that. So I'm going to turn it over to John now. Mike, you're on mic.
Still on.
Great.
Okay, so some of the feedback we got at the prior meeting is, so what have you just went, you priced this thing out and didn't make any changes. Well, we did go price it out, but we did have to make some changes because when we submitted the deferred schematic report, we were at one number, and when we developed our design and submitted the drawings to the estimators, the numbers we got back were high. So we were above the $120 million number that we kind of has established at PSR. So we went through a process where we did some value management and looked at all of the major components of the building: site, structure, envelope, interiors, and mechanical, and said, we've got to get this number back down. So just from a high level, we did some value engineering on the site, made some grading changes. The Flannery Field is grass. Made some changes to some of the materials, some of the grading issues. This job requires a lot of cut and fill, and while there's overall we're trying to balance the site, you have to put material somewhere. The site's not big enough to put it anywhere. So the initial pass at the drawings was to take it all off and then bring it back. That's very costly. Instead, one of the options was, let's just raise the grades a little bit higher and not have to move as much material. Structurally, there was full roof access through a stairwell. In talking with facilities, they said, we don't need that. Let's just make it the normal kind of hatch and a collapsible ladder. We also simplified the main entry. As you recall seeing the big cantilevered overhang over the front entry, that's the old version. The newer version is going to be a little bit, won't hang out quite as far, and it won't have to be as tall, which saved us about $1 million. On the envelope, we reduced the amount of glazing, the amount of windows. Windows are 4 to 5 times more expensive than brick. So obviously you want enough natural light, but you don't want so much glass that the number becomes cost prohibitive. On the interior, one of the big changes was taking out some terrazzo flooring. The biggest change mechanically was going from geothermal, from an all-electric system to a dual fuel system, and then also reducing the amount of the lighting fixture package. Those two things together combined were about $2.6 million. Additionally, between the PSR and the schematic submission, we were able to reduce the overall site costs. And the result of all of those savings allowed us to include in the number the original feasibility, $1.1 million, the Cushing abatement and demo, and also replacement of the force main on hand vinyl. So with all of those deductions and then additions, we're still able to achieve a total project budget that was less than the PSR value, which was 120.1. So the project value submitted to the MSBA was 119.4. A little bit more on that. You can see the PSR numbers on the left. You see the 120, maybe the laser pointer on our screen, sorry. On the left, you had $92 million in construction when we submitted PSR. At that point, we just estimated 30% as soft costs for the project, which resulted in a $120.1 million project. We anticipated the grant at around 28% net, which had a town share of about 86.4 million. Submitting the schematic design, the construction budget went up to 94.9, but the soft cost came down to 24.5, resulting in an overall total project budget of 119.4. We had our grant call with the MSBA today, and that 35,814,280, that's the number. That's the number that will be on the project documents moving forward as the total maximum grant from the MSBA, leaving that town share of 83,620,663. So, again, there's your total project budget at the top. And we said the estimated taxpayer share, 82,520,663. You say, wait a minute, John, a minute ago you just said it was 83,600, and it was. But you have to take away the $1.1 million for the feasibility study that the town already voted and approved at a prior town meeting. So if you take the net of those two, the 82.5 million, based on the median home value of 921,000 and a level principal approach to paying back, as you saw in the video, over 25 years. For that value home, the first year payment would be $866, and the year 25 payment would be $414, with a total impact over the 25 years of $15,988. Again, there's a number of assumptions based on that. Again, the median home value, that changes every year. We're looking at a 25-year bond using a conservative interest rate of 4.75%. And again, that's based on the data that came out of the MSBA today. So any questions on that? Nancy Holt is here to be able to answer. We also have Nancy prepared a tax impact kind of quick reference guide so that you can see the assessed value of your property, what that means in year one. And then you can also see that the biggest impact of this is really what the interest rate is when we go to market. And Nancy, is it still fair to say if we were going out to market today, the rate would be between 3 3/4 and 4?
Yes.
So as you can see, we're using a conservative approach of 4 3/4, not closer to the 3 3/4 you might be able to get today if we were actually going to market to do the borrowing. So what does a yes vote and a no vote mean? Yes vote's easy. Yes vote, the project passes at town meeting, passes at the ballot. Basically, the timeline that Don showed at the beginning continues on. We continue with 15 months of design and bidding and break ground late in the summer of 2025 with the building opening in the fall of 27. What's a no vote mean? Well, a no vote, we always like to talk a little bit about the MSBA's failed vote policy because people do go on their website and they check it out. The MSBA's failed vote policy is what happens if you don't pass at town meeting, if you don't pass at the ballot. And it's not meant as a plan B. It's meant to give the district more than 120 days, which is what the MSBA typically asks for, or requires, I should say, between when they approve the project, as an example, at their April board meeting. Situate has 120 days to come back and say, yes, we support the project, and prove that by way of certified votes from both of those entities. Failed vote is not to come up with, well, let's build it smaller, let's do something else, because, as was said also in the video, we are in the project scope and budget phase of this project. And now that we've had that call with the MSBA, the district will, and the town will soon be asked to sign a project scope and budget agreement, which dictates the size building on the Hatherly site at a total project budget of $119.4 million. Any deviation from that is a different project. So if there's a no vote, it really is a starting over. And as Don alluded to earlier, it was 10 years to get to where we are now. It's probably at least 4 or 5 to get back to where we are now with a new submission to the MSBA. Now we'll open it up to questions.
So we do have one question that's come into the Metafeeder platform, and I'll read it for everyone. Can you explain how the project is providing what kids need for today's learning environments without being a project with too many bells and whistles that are unnecessary? Maybe I'll first direct that to you, Scott or Christine.
So I think that this project doesn't really have all of those trendy things. When we really put into these purposeful innovations, they are things that students need today. A modern classroom works in small groups, has flexible seating. Kids are able to collaborate with each other. That speaking and listening is actually part of our Massachusetts standards as well. So students need to have the ability to work together. We often have teachers in the room, multiple teachers working at one time, and that can be really distracting when you just have one room to work in. So when we looked at those slides that had the extended learning areas, the courtyards, those are not really bells and whistles. Those are research-based innovations that help our students learn.
I couldn't have said it better, thank you, Christine. I just want to add to that, so folks know, we did go out with teachers, with administrators, with people on the building committee and toured multiple new buildings to see what was out there for innovation, for current trends to meet the needs that Christine talked about with modern learning. And we picked a few different things from each of those experiences that would fit Situate and our needs as well. And so I would revert back to the slides that we showed about the 23 options. When we applied that learning envisioning process with the community involvement, with teachers involvement, kids involvement, parents, and we said this is what we want for our kids, coupled with what Christine just said. And then we put that together, we built the building around that. And then we went through 23 iterations to make sure that we got the best building to last 60 years. And also, and I think there was a slide we didn't have tonight, that we cut down millions of dollars of things through this process as we went through it. So make sure that we were very cognizant of the taxpayers out there that would incur the cost of this. So I think that was a very purposeful experience too.
Maybe I can ask a follow-up question. Is it fair to say that the nature of the activities that are being housed in this new project are already occurring in the existing buildings? You're just doing it in ad hoc space. Scott, for example, you talked about the small group room that's been constructed out of furniture and office partitions in the library space. The new project accommodates the same kind of activity, it just does it in purpose-built space rather than accidental space. Is that a fair sort of summary of what you've got?
I would echo that, Jason and Christine, but when, and Superintendent Burke had mentioned this, we had the privilege of visiting 3 sites with very new features. I don't believe this is a bells and whistles model. This is purposeful, strategic, child-centered instruction. And this new building would offer state-of-the-art learning and expected learning environments for today's student, meeting the needs of all learners across the spectrum, if that makes sense. And Mr. Burkhead is correct. We involved teachers, parents, students, administrators. The pillars that we developed together as a team created a clear vision for a state-of-the-art facility. So I don't think this is new and special. It's expected delivery for today in 2024.
We don't have any other questions on the Mentimeter platform, so maybe we'll open up to the room here. Are there any questions in the room that need to be answered?
I've got a couple, actually. I didn't realize in the other 2 pieces that I had come to that the having the students outside the classroom put their jackets in their lunch boxes, is that protocol today? If they're not in the classrooms? Okay, all right. I would find that would be unacceptable.
It's not something that we're used to, certainly not something that was in classrooms when I was a child either. But even kindergartners today have their hooks outside of the classroom.
Okay.
So we don't have cubbies like that, so what you have is coats, jackets falling, they may not be the best at getting something on a hook, boots being kicked all over the hallway. So this is definitely an improvement in design, and it allows the classroom to have more storage inside. So it happens a lot just because we need that storage, and they are more than able to handle that.
And the vandalism is not a problem with, somebody taking coats or lunch boxes or anything like that? Okay.
No, not at all.
My second question that I had at my last one that I was here was the windows. Does the town currently have an elevator lift or whatnot to wash up those high windows inside and outside? Because those windows are on what side of the building? North, south, east, or west?
Yes.
Yeah, I want, which one? All of them?
There's windows on every surface of the project.
Okay,
You're talking about the tall
the
windows.
the two-level windows that are high,
The ones that you
the
saw,
wall.
the ones that you saw in the image are on the north side of the cafeteria, so they're north-facing windows.
Okay, so that's gonna be a cold wind direction.
We have a lift, we have a couple lifts in the schools. We have one at
The
high
town
school.
already owns them,
Yeah, we have one
Okay.
also,
for the inside and outside. Okay, because I think
They're
that's gonna
essential.
create a very cool environment in there with those windows on the north side of the building.
So a difference between modern buildings and this building, for example, is that the heating system will be designed that there's supplemental heating at the windows for exactly that reason, right? To create warmth at the window when we have conditions that may be adverse like that.
Well, it'd be great if the sun is out, however, you know, if you have a northeaster coming through, it's gonna be bitter. And then you're wasting your extra electricity. But as long as they can get clean periodically.
yeah.
Also, please keep in mind that the windows that we have, the windows that you have in buildings now are not as energy efficient as the windows that we'll be putting in this new building. The windows in the new building will be triple glazed, which is, you know, over and above what you see in most buildings now. The bar was just recently raised on the energy code in Massachusetts, so that's what we're following when we're designing this new building.
I know, it all sounds good, practical, can't wait to see 2 years down the road. Thank you.
Are there any other questions in the room?
So, we're not recording.
We are.
So I've been seeing, addressing the water issues and just how the school is going to be handling drainage. What I did see, according to two of the slides, one had a soil projection holding area, which appears to be a new area that needs to be created. That's kind of open field currently, so you may have to cut down trees to do that. Furthermore, you're raising the grade of the entire school area, which is also going to create a hard runoff. So this concern that raising has been addressed multiple times. What I'm not hearing and what I'm not seeing from you is how this is actually being addressed on the property once this new building is being in place. And that is an issue that I would like to see. I mean, I'm going to talk about it now, but like when you start reaching out to the abutters, that's something that we need to have like full confidence in.
Yes, so, we've had this conversation at other meetings. The site plan is going to be designed for full stormwater management. The requirement now is that any water that falls on the site that we're dealing with stays on the site and gets percolated back into the ground or goes into the storm system. I believe most of the runoff that is going to be collected in stormwater recharge areas on the site, and the current stormwater design best practice is that not very much really leaves the site into the street, into the stormwater system in the street. So that, just in kind of broad terms, that's really what's going to be happening on the site.
Would it be helpful, right, Dr. Superintendent Burke had mentioned earlier, that part of the purpose of these meetings is to get this kind of feedback so that we can refine the next iteration of these presentations. Would it be helpful if we had a slide or two that described in more detail what the current stormwater management systems and strategy are?
Current state, future state, certainly. And any of the data, as you guys did multiple tests, that helped sort of validate and confirm this, yes. You guys did a great job, with the presentations, compared to where we were. So, yeah, I want to see more. The concerns are like, the property's already surrounded by wetlands. Those wetlands are going to grow. That water, I've already mentioned this, water's going to find its way. And I'm not confident based on what I'm hearing. I need to see more, I need to hear more, to be convinced that it's not gonna grow.
So the district will take, and the design team will take that feedback, and we'll see what additional information we can provide at our next round of meetings, including the upcoming abutter meetings.
Yeah, I just want to reiterate, just so the community knows, and I know I told Chris this earlier, that we plan on having another abutter meeting. We'll send a mailing out, and I think hearing you clearly, that we'll add this to our next presentation, but also have much more detail for that abutter meeting, which is very specific to that group of people, and obviously a really legitimate concern, so we will definitely do that. Thank you for the input.
And for that audit meeting, like, you know, then the whole noise thing too, so that'd just be another thing to just, to that whole topic. Thank you, absolutely.
So to move us along a little bit, we had hoped to get some feedback from you related to things that you like and things that you didn't like. Since we have so few here in the room, perhaps we can just invite some of you to comment on these if you are willing. Was there anything in the slideshow that you are excited about relating to the project?
As a butter, I like the ability to use the space. I go to the plenary field right now with my dogs. Not that I'll go maybe to the new field with them, but I feel that having a playground. Also, like, I was just thinking about this, but like if there's a walking track per se around the property, building in some sort of like fitness stations, you know, a pull-up bar, a push-up station, a balance beam, that gives the community folks something to, you know, whatever, that sort of exercise.
Yeah, we haven't focused a lot on that, but Tom, maybe you can quickly describe some of the other site features that are particularly in that northwest corner that may respond to that.
Yeah, so there's a kind of a discovery trail that does go around part of the outside of the site. We haven't really gotten too deep into the details, but you know, the fitness stations were one idea that came up. Nature interpretive stations was another idea that came up. They're in the northwest corner of the site, which is closest to the wetland that's kind of goes out to Muswashka, that whole area there. There's an outdoor learning area there, and there's been some discussion about could there be trails that go out into the conserved land and access the wetland somehow. So it's not part of the project, but it's another thought that we've had in terms of kind of future development there.
Anything else that anyone is willing to share what they're excited about?
Hi. My daughters both go to Cushing currently, so the whole project excites me. Obviously, one of my daughters might be there for 1 year when it first opened. I think the outdoor space for me is just the courtyard, the ability to have that flex space in and out is something that's just really, it just opens so many possibilities up for, you know, for teachers, for specialists, for everything. I really hope people don't see that as a bell or a whistle. It's not something that's really outside of the box anymore. I was a teacher too. I've been on it for 10 years. But my kids put their stuff out in the hallway, my kindergartners did. And I worked in another school where we had project rooms connecting each of the classrooms for a breakout space. These aren't new concepts. They're pretty standard and been very needed here, so.
We appreciate you sharing that. It's always dangerous to ask this question, but this kind of feedback is also very valuable. Is there anybody that's willing to share things that you wish could be better about the project? There's very little opportunity to change big things between now and when the funding votes occur, but there is still lots of opportunity to tweak things, to make adjustments as the design moves into the next phase. So we're interested in that kind of feedback also. Are there things that folks have seen that they wish could be better?
Price.
Very good. Price? I think we all wish that. We can share, right, you never know the future. Are you gonna Go ahead.
I'd like to address the price. We've worked hard to get the price to where it is today. Just want to assure everyone here that we're going to continue to work to keep the price down and maybe even get it lower as we go forward. We'll look for opportunities to save money throughout the entire process. So it's not done.
What are like, just a general thing, like, that can actually increase the cost versus decrease it significantly? Like, what can go awry, that can, and what can be positive? I mean, it's hypothetical, but what's a common thing that you would see that could maybe happen?
Sure, it comes on unforeseen conditions, right? So the fact that we're not going to try and renovate an existing building and add on to it, that helps to minimize those unforeseen conditions, right? Because you're not going to be opening up walls and finding things that you just didn't know were there. So you kind of minimize that by doing a new building. So when you're doing a new building, then you say, well, where could there be unforeseen conditions, right? And it really is underground. It's what may be there that we don't know about yet. Now, we've done borings, we've done test pits. We will be doing more of those. To date, we don't see any issues. But basically, people who don't know, geotechnical borings are basically taking drill rigs and dropping them down in certain locations throughout the site. You can drop 3 across here, and in between 2 of them, you can find a bunch of ledge or something. I'm exaggerating. The soil profiles don't appear to be displaying any of that, so we don't expect to find that. But that's why we have a contingency. Right, so we have a 5% construction contingency and a 2% owner's contingency built into this project for those unforeseen conditions. Right? The other things that could affect the cost down the road are what none of us have control over, which is the market and what, we came out of this pandemic and we saw this spike in the pricing. And what's good about what's happening with this project now is we've seen the spike. We've seen a bit of a leveling off and maybe a less of an increase over time that we saw for the short term. So we're managing that also.
The soil
switching.
thing, that's a good example, that makes sense.
Yeah.
I just think, just quickly with the cost, also too, we have said it in other presentations, that 119.4, that's gospel now, right? And in there, it was a $94 million construction number. With an approval of the project, Doherty will continue the design process for about 4 or 5 months and then stop. And then we'll get 2 estimates again, and we'll check, and we'll make sure that we're still on the path. And if we're lower, great. If we're over, nope, stop. If we're over, we stop right then and we address it, and we get back in line by looking at other value items. We do that again 2 more times before this job goes out to bid. Also, a note on the construction numbers. Those numbers are provided by estimators that aren't trying to give us the low price on bid day. They're trying to give us the middle of the pack. So if we get 7 bids on bid day, those estimates represent bid number 4, 3 more lower. We never want to give you an estimate of what we think what really good news could be, because that gives you no flexibility if the price of steel goes up right before the bid or drywall becomes scarce or something like that. So I do think we watch and monitor, and that's part of the MSBA process. They want to make sure that a bid doesn't get blown, so that on bid day, wait, 94 is no longer 94, it's 98. All you've got is contingency. We would never want to start a job having to use a bunch of the contingency to make up for an overage. We'd much rather it be the other way, have some savings, and then 4 or 6 months into the job say, we saved some money, maybe we can make, we can add something that we had, been holding out for. So, to Don's point, like, we will continue to try to work that process and get this thing as, as cost effectively as we can.
Sure.
I just wanted to mention the contingency that Don mentioned, and John, you can correct me, it's about $6 to $7 million in contingency.
Yes.
And that only gets spent if there's a contingency requiring it.
Right.
Otherwise, that's project costs that don't have to be incurred.
And don't get borrowed, and don't get and then the cheapest dollar is the dollar that's not spent, not the dollar that MSBA gives you 30 cents back on, right? It's the one that we never have to spend in the first place.
Okay, I've got
contingencies put aside, like a TEL sort of does like an escrow. So the town is gonna get that contingency back. Right?
Yeah, it's completely uncommitted money, so but basically the MSBA requires at the vote that you authorize the complete expenditure of $119.4 million. How the town borrows it is a completely different process, right? Do they ever borrow the whole 119? Probably not best, because you're gonna get 30-something of it back, right? So that becomes a question of how the town typically borrows, some strategies involved in that, timing, borrowing, what the rates are doing, there's a lot of that. The contingencies will be monitored by the building committee, which will meet monthly at least during the project. If there is an extra that comes up, an unforeseen condition, an owner request, hey, we should have put a blank in the building, that's the kind of thing where that committee has to vote on it and give the okay. Again, if things come up that are unexpected, it's a piece of ledge, we got to deal with it. We will, I'll say it right now, we will use some of the contingency. No project progresses without some use of it, but we want it to be a very judicial application of it.
Did you have one other thing you wanted to?
Yes, I'm gonna direct my question to you guys over here. Who's gonna take responsibility for the maintenance of the building once the project is finished and the grounds for the next 10 to 15 years, so that it does not fall into disrepair like this school in Hatherly? I mean, this is key.
That would be me.
And
So
I'm
we've
gonna
already-
hold you to
yeah.
it. I'll be your worst enemy.
We've already made some great changes. We've hired our own HVAC mechanic, who now takes care of all the schools daily, all the maintenance, all the repairs. We hired 2 really good vendors, electrical, plumbing just came on board as well. And we've really made some changes. We've upped our budget. How much to maintain the schools?
150,000.
By another 150,000, so we've really been making some
I mean, I think that that's the, the thing that needs to be addressed.
I agree.
Before you start any projects, because this is a shame.
I agree.
And when we were here, I was PTO treasurer here light years ago, but we tried to do some of this. We had stuff volunteered. Our first playground, we had one of the families donate half of the money for the playground that we put out here. But the town is notoriously bad about this, and this is important.
My philosophy is when you first build a building, that's when you start to maintain it.
Right.
Don't wait till it breaks down. That's when you start doing all the maintenance, set up all the programs and schedules.
That's why I'm
In the
wondering,
beginning,
the
yes.
first 15 years.
And I've been here a year. One year
Okay.
today is my anniversary, and we've already done a lot of things.
Okay.
Well, happy anniversary.
Well, thank you very much.
Yeah, your card.
Thank you.
Yeah, I just want to reiterate, if you recall this slide, I showed the $6.5 million in the capital. I think that
Yes.
was our way of showing, that wasn't happening 4 years ago, or not very consistently. So that, we also have a line item in our operational budget, which is rare in school districts, $250,000 that we spend on upkeep, if you will, kind of maintenance on the daily level. And I think we've had this conversation with our capital planning board here in town, our select board, have all given us that advice, and we've heeded it. And I think we've built the trust of the community by doing that. So thank you for that question. It's really important because this shouldn't happen. They are old, but there are some things that could have been taken care of.
Yes,
And we're doing that with our other buildings, so we won't be back here. And we're going to continue to document those. And every year, I share this report in our budget book when we do our town meeting coming up. You'll see all the money we've invested into maintenance of our buildings. So thank you for that
Great,
question.
thank you.
Well, thank you.
Can I just add one little tidbit of information about this issue? John actually shared with me tonight that this isn't going unnoticed, even at the MSBA level, right? There was some data around the incentive points that districts get for maintenance. That number was much lower for the Gates project than what was offered for this project. So that's evidence that the maintenance procedures and expenditures have gone up in your district since that time. So that's an encouraging data point there. And with that, I'll turn it over to Don to close us out.
So, thank you all for coming. Thank you for your patience. Thank you for your questions and your comments. They're all extremely helpful. We are just over a month away from our first vote, right? So it's coming down to it. But before that, we still have another public forum, April 2nd, at the Senior Center. Same time? Yep, same time. And then April 24th is that all-important MSBA board meeting that you mentioned earlier, where the board will officially vote to recommend the project going forward. And we don't see any issues with that. John mentioned we had a meeting with them just today. So we'll continue to have conversations with the MSBA staff leading up to that. But coming up, we have April 29th, special town meeting, and that's important. It's a special town meeting for this project. April 8th is the annual town meeting. So this is another special town meeting coming a few weeks later, and then with that favorable vote, we have the election, which we'll have the election anyway. May 18th, from 8 a.m. to 6 p.m. So everything in high school. And then all the information that we've gathered and produced and presented is all available on sit.org. You see this icon right on the main page. You can also go to situatema.gov, which is town's website, and there's a link to this also. So all this information is available for people to peruse at their leisure. With that,
Thank you, everyone.
thank you.
We'll stick around after if you have any questions that you want to share with us or comments, but otherwise, thanks for your time. Have a good evening. Thank you.
Thank you.